right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Bike to Campus Week Day 2. My name is Nick Goodfellow. I'm a Sustainability Coordinator at the University of Pittsburgh. Bike to Campus Week is a collaborative effort between the University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon University, and Bike Pittsburgh to welcome new and returning riders to the Pittsburgh campuses. This year, we've turned the event into a virtual festival with more than a dozen sessions to cover all the essentials to starting a bike commute. A few notes, this session is being recorded and will be available to watch starting next week on the Bike Pittsburgh YouTube page. All participants are muted. If you would like to ask a question, please write it in the chat on Zoom or on Facebook. And finally, please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat, such as your name, what campus you're affiliated with, how long you've been riding, or what you want to learn about today. So today we've got 2 sessions on traffic skills about riding in the city, today at 10 and today at 2 o'clock. Tomorrow we have sessions about what to wear and how to accessorize your bike for a commute. Thursday we have a general tabling session during lunch, as well as campus-specific sessions in the afternoon. And then Friday we've got sessions on planning a route, accessing the trails, and group rides. So today we're joined by Anna Tang and Karen Brooks, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Anna,
Hello.
take it away.
Hi, my name is Anna Tang. I'm the community organizer with Bike Pittsburgh.
Hi, I'm Karen Brooks, and I'm the bike consultant for Carnegie Mellon University. And Anna and I together have been, we helped develop the curriculum, and we've been teaching the Confident City Cycling classes through Bike Pittsburgh for what, 5 years now?
Yeah.
It's been a while. And since we can't do it in person this year, we've been working on figuring out how to do it virtually. So we're excited to be able to do this for you guys today.
Yeah, and we are also both League of American Cyclist certified bike instructors too. So just to get us started, we're going to start with rules of the road. Follow the law. So for your safety and the perception of people on bikes depend on you. You have the same rights and duties as motorists, which means you have to follow the same laws as those who are driving on the street. You have to obey all traffic signals and stop signs, ride with traffic, and use the rightmost lane that serves your destination.
We'll get into a little more detail about some of these things, like the rightmost lane thing. But essentially what we're saying is it's good to act like a car when you can. And it's good to get out of the way or choose a different route if the traffic is going too fast and you can't act like a car. But in order to be safe and also to get the respect of other drivers, it's good to, certainly obey the same laws as far as traffic signals and stop signs especially. You want to go to the next slide?
Yep, be predictable. So this is extremely important so that everybody knows what you are going to be doing. So you want to make sure that your intentions are clear to everyone. Ride in a straight line and don't swerve between parked cars. So when you're biking on the road, you don't want to go in and out between parked cars. You want to just bike in a straight line. You want to use your turn signals and check behind you well in advance before making a turn or changing lanes.
We'll have some diagrams a little bit later to explain some of these things a bit more as well. And next slide.
The next one is be conspicuous. Ride where people can see you and wear bright clothing. Use a front white light, rear red light, and reflectors at dusk and in bad weather. And just to note that PA law requires riders to have a front light and a rear and side reflectors. It's also a good idea to make contact with drivers so that you know that they have seen you. And typically you should not ride on sidewalks. Excuse me. You can ride in sidewalks outside of business districts, but you are not allowed to ride on sidewalks in business districts.
And do we have a rule of thumb for what constitutes a business district?
Generally, if there's a business, you can consider it a business district. Which sounds really obvious, but I would say that most of Oakland is a business district. if not all of it, where, you know, there's the restaurants and the university is, and the same with CMU. If you're basically in a neighborhood that's not a business district, it's a residential area. So it is a little hard to tell, but in general, you should not ride on a sidewalk because it's an area for pedestrians. And you can also know that, like, at any time that you're riding a bike, you can become a pedestrian by just getting off of your bike and walking.
Yes. All of these things that we've just gone over can be summed up more or less by the, if you remember to be a PAL, and I just put it in the chat, predictable, aware, and lawful. Those things will go a long way to helping you when you're riding with traffic. Can we go to the next one?
So think ahead. Anticipate what drivers, pedestrians, and other people on bikes, and in cars for that matter, will do next. Watch for turning vehicles and ride outside the door zone. So that's the area where if someone was in their car parked and they opened it, you would be outside of that and you wouldn't get hit by the door being opened. So look out for debris as well as potholes and other road hazards like squirrels or little rocks and things. And make sure to cross railroad tracks at right angles.
I will talk a little bit more about scanning ahead, but a lot of what we do in our classes is making sure that people have the confidence to ride their bikes well enough that they can look out ahead and be scanning the environment all around you while you're riding so that you're not surprised by anything that happens. One quick tip to anticipate what drivers are going to do next, you can pay attention to cues such as, well, turn signals are an obvious one, but they don't always happen. You can look at how the wheels are oriented. If the front wheels are turned slightly, you know that the driver is going to go in that direction. You can look at, if you can see in the windows, the driver's head, see where they're looking. Pedestrians, you can notice if they're about to step off the sidewalk in the middle of the block or something like that. Sometimes you can, if you're going down a street next to a line of parked cars, you can try to look in the windows and see if anyone is in the car. And if there is someone in the car, maybe anticipate that they might open the driver's side door into your path and give them a little more space.
Mm-hmm. The next one is ride ready. So before you go out on a ride, make sure you do an ABC quick check, which stands for checking your air, your brakes, your chain cassette cranks and pedals, and all of your quick releases to just make sure that everything is dialed in before you set out on your ride. Make sure that you carry tools and supplies that are appropriate for your bike and that are specific for your bike, and you can fix your bike with your tools. They're not for somebody else's bike or like the wrong size tools. And also, if you can, wear a helmet. In PA, it's not legally required that people over the age of 12 have a helmet, but we highly recommend it because what I usually say is if you have a cell phone case and you're willing to pay to protect your phone, you can spend the money to protect your head, which is where your brain is and all of that function for your body. So if you protect your phone, protect your head.
Good point. Yeah. We also had a session yesterday that will be available on YouTube and Facebook called Getting Ready for a Commute that goes over the ABC Quick Check and what you might carry with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on Bike Pittsburgh's website, we also have a breakdown of the ABC Quick Check too. So it's all written out. So getting to scanning. So scanning is the act of looking over your shoulder and to your sides and all around you to see what's going on in the road. It communicates your intentions to others. It also helps you to maintain a straight line while scanning. And you want to scan the road surface for potholes and debris. So basically, like in this diagram, you're just looking to see what everybody in the vicinity of where you are biking is doing so that you can anticipate actions and also bike in a straight line to be predictable.
There are a lot of things to look at. And sometimes for new riders, it can get a little bit overwhelming. But if you just act like you're in a car, and I remember from, learning to drive as a 16-year-old, the instructor said, scan from sidewalk to sidewalk, what's going on in front of you. As bike riders, sometimes we also have to occasionally glance behind us. But the more you do it, the better, the easier it becomes. And you can learn to anticipate based on small cues, like we talked about, where the wheels are pointing, small movements. But it's very important not to just look right in front of your front wheel, but to look out ahead. Two reasons. One, to be aware of what's going on around you, but two, it actually helps you to balance better if you can keep your head up, keep your chin up, keep your head level. That makes it easier to ride in a straight line. It makes it easier to make moves such as turns or quick stops and be in control.
Great. So types of hazards. So surface, metal surfaces, cracks and pavements, you know, like potholes, joints, rails, those types of things on the surface are hazards. Being doored is also a hazard. So people opening up their doors when they're parking or just pulled to the side of the road. Oftentimes, around like schools or places where people are doing a lot of drop-offs, like downtown Pittsburgh is another place where there's just a lot of people pulling over and getting out to go into restaurants. I'm sure you're all aware, like in Oakland, there's a lot of people pulling over and dropping off students, deliveries, things like that. And just being aware of that door zone area, like the picture on the right shows like a cyclist kind of veering out of the bike lane a little bit to get around that door area. And visibility, so that's also a hazard. So different times of the day, obviously there's different things become more or less visible depending on the light or fog or different things like that. So weather and objects are also a hazard, as well as just potholes in general. There's a lot of potholes in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I added that last point because we have lots of potholes. Mm-hmm. So that's an important thing to scan for. Yeah. The first point that Anna mentioned, metal surfaces. When there's construction and they put those big metal plates over a hole, be aware that if it's wet, those are quite slippery. Also, paint can be slippery when it's wet. Not so much the green paint that's shown like in a bike lane in the illustration there. The city has very helpfully put sand in the green paint so that where cyclists go on green boxes and lanes, there's some grip to that. But the piano keys for a crosswalk, thick white lines, especially if they're freshly painted, can be slippery when they're wet. Visibility can be an issue, not so much this year. We've had nice, bright, sunny days, but typical Pittsburgh weather, it can be pretty dim. So I like to keep lights on my bike year round and use them even if it's just cloudy so that I'm visible, mm-hmm. But then also if they're bright enough, like, dusk conditions, I can see, it highlights hazards on the road and other things going on around me.
Mm-hmm. And even if it is sunny, like just the sun coming into like the opposite directions people's faces, like that can be blinding. So even if it is a nice day, it can be effective.
Oh, Nick, our moderator, says he once slipped on a wet manhole cover.
Yes.
Yeah, that's possible.
Black ice, this time of year, probably more into October where it'll be like freezing temperatures in the morning, but then it'll get back up into the 60s by the afternoon. There could be black ice sometimes too. So just paying attention to the weather is important before you head out on a ride for hazards.
Yeah, actually that last winter was not that bad, but twice I got stuck in black ice conditions and that is a very thin layer of ice that you can't necessarily see. The road just looks wet. But if it's cold enough, it might be icy. So something to pay attention to, the temperature, if it suddenly drops after a rain or after a snow, like the snow melts, it's a good thing to be aware of. And ice is one of those things you just can't mess around with. So sometimes you just have to catch a bus or become a pedestrian for a little while. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, so signaling. This is also part of being predictable. So when you are making a turn or changing lanes, you just want to make sure that you are signaling correctly. So if you look at this diagram, stopping is just putting your arm at a right angle with your hand at the bottom position. Left is sticking your arm out to the left. Right is sticking your arm out to the right. Or what you can also do is use your left arm and put it in a right angle position with your hand above your head, or like towards your head versus downwards. So there's two ways to make a right hand turn: sticking your arm out to the right or putting your left arm up at a right angle. Left is just sticking your left arm out, and stopping is right angle with your left arm with your hand down. And when you're signaling, before you change lanes or make a turn, you want to look, signal, look again, and then make your move.
Yeah, I found that most Pittsburgh drivers really appreciate when bicyclists act like cars, and signaling is a huge part of that. So many times I've gone to make a left turn and been like, oh, how's this going to work? Is anyone going to let me go? But this simple act of signaling, people will yield the right of way to me, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I usually wave thank you. And everyone's
everyone's happy.
Yeah. So now we're going to get a little bit into the principles of traffic law. So positioning. We already brought this up before, but to get into it a little bit deeper, where should I ride on the road? So sharing the lane or taking the lane. So lane positioning, speed positioning, changing lanes, and intersection positioning. We will get into this a little bit deeper in a moment here. So lane positioning. A person on a bike has a basic right to the road. So you are entitled to the space on the road you need to operate safely. The safest place to position yourself may be in the middle of the road. Whoops, sorry. Excuse me. Sorry about that. The safest place to position yourself may be in the middle of the road. So should you share the lane or should you take the lane? It depends on the street that you're on, the width of the road, and how traffic is flowing. So
typically,
go
ahead. Typically in Pittsburgh, especially, the wider the street, the faster the traffic will go, despite what the speed limit says, which is part of the reason why Bike Pittsburgh has a lot of efforts in traffic calming measures, as it's called, which is simply road design that encourages people to slow down. So a street, we have some other examples as well, but like Butler Street in Lawrenceville, it's fairly narrow and congested, and that's a street that's not too difficult to ride in the lane. And you might be slowing people down slightly, but really no more than typical traffic. A wider street will often encourage drivers to go faster, but it also often has room for you to get over to the right to let that faster traffic go by.
Right.
The thing about positioning yourself in the middle, you might ask, why ever do that? In the illustration here, if this cyclist were to try to get over, that might, for drivers, that's sometimes a signal, oh, should I try to pass that cyclist? In this situation, there's not really very much room. And if there's cars coming in the oncoming lane, they're not going to be able to get around safely. It might lead to a situation where the driver tries to squish past just out of ignorance, not trying to harm you. So simply taking the lane is a signal to the driver behind, hey, just wait a minute. And then if you feel like they're encroaching, if you feel like the traffic speed is picking up, you can wait for an opportunity to get over to the right and let traffic pass you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you ever do feel uncomfortable on a road that is narrow, kind of like this one, and you want to let cars pass, I would suggest just pulling over to the side, waiting, and then re-merging back into traffic when most of the flow of traffic has passed you.
When it's safe, yeah.
Mm-hmm. When it's safe to re-enter. So intersection positioning. The most important part of riding through an intersection is your positioning. So here there's 3 examples of, like, you can be in the middle of the lane, you can be to the right of the lane, or to the left of the lane. And we'll get into intersection positioning here in a second. So when we talk about intersection positioning and riding on a road, we want you to be in the rightmost lane that serves your destination. So be in the rightmost lane in the direction that you're heading. And that is basically following the same rules as cars, which is that you always, like, the slowest traffic should be in the right-hand lane. And as a cyclist, you are probably some of the slowest traffic on the road. So you always want to be in the rightmost lane in the direction that you're heading. And you can always get off your bike and navigate as a pedestrian. So in this picture, you see like the cyclist wants to continue straight. So that cyclist needs to cut over 2 lanes to get in the rightmost lane that is heading straight instead of continuing straight in the turning lanes. So this cyclist would need to signal, look, and then merge over into that lane that is heading straight in the direction that they are going.
Yeah, this is, along with being a pal, this is probably the chief rule that we teach, to be in the rightmost lane that goes to your destination. You know how irritating it is as a car driver if you're in, say, that straight lane in the diagram and someone to the right of you is also trying to go straight, but the lane gets narrow ahead. So then they're trying to like squish in. We've seen that time and time again with cyclists. They just want to be over on the right, but if that right lane ends, then suddenly they're kind of dumped out into traffic, which, I mean, occasionally that happens, especially in the areas where the bike lane ends, but know that you have to act like a car in those situations, yield to traffic coming up behind you. So, you know, just like it's a merge point on the highway, signal and get over in a controlled manner, not just suddenly weaving into traffic.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because if you weave into traffic, it's not being predictable, and it's also not biking in a straight line. So it's always important to signal before you do it. And just know, like we've said before, but we'll say it again, that you can always get off your bike if you're in a tricky situation and become a pedestrian and walk to the next point where it will be safe to merge back in with traffic. I do that more often than not. So,
right.
And especially in tricky intersections.
Yeah. And the cyclist in this diagram is, excuse me, anticipating, looking ahead and saying, oh, okay, wait, this lane is turning right. I don't want it to right. And they are merging well before the end of the lane, which is something that is really helpful. Often you have a lot more room before the end of the block, before the signal or the end of, you know, the intersection. So you can merge like halfway down the block and get in the lane that you want to be in well ahead of time. That helps a lot.
Yeah, and this also goes back to the like looking up and scanning. And if you are doing that while you're biking, you'll see well enough in time what lane you need to be in so that you have time to merge and get over into whatever lane it is that you need to be in to continue on your way. Okay. So bicycling in traffic. This is just some diagrams of kind of what we were saying about being in the rightmost lane in the direction that you're heading. So there's the one-way street where, you know, the rightmost lane to turn left would be the left lane, and the rightmost lane in the direction to turn right would be the right lane. There's the dual destination right turn on the top right, which is like if you want to go straight, you can stay in the right-hand lane or stay in that lane to turn right because it's both directions. There's a two-way street where it shows like turning right into the right-hand lane to continue, or turning left from the right-hand lane or from the one lane into making a left-hand turn, and a right turn only lane also. So like you have to be in the right-hand lane to make the right, or in the left-hand lane to continue straight. So it's just overemphasizing the being in the rightmost lane for the direction that you are going. Changing lanes. So to change a lane, what you want to do is scan, signal your intention, scan again, and then yield to traffic and make your move and move smoothly into the lane that you need to get into, whether that's the left or the right.
And this is something that we teach in person, and I believe we'll have some videos illustrating, but it's a good thing to practice, like even just in a parking lot, being able to take one hand off your handlebar to signal, and also being able to look behind you while still going in a straight line. Mm-hmm. The key to that is basically keeping your weight down in your butt on your seat. Sometimes I also will sit up and take my left hand off the handlebar and put it on my hip so that it's easier to turn my torso to look behind me. But essentially what you're doing here is acting like a car. You are anticipating, as in the diagram here, that you're going to want to be in the other lane. So you first look, signal, look again, make sure there's an opening, yield to traffic, and then get over. And again, this cyclist is getting over well before the very end of the lanes here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And some people will have like a little mirror on their bike or like a little mirror attached to their helmet, but a mirror never replaces actually turning your head to check a blind spot or things like that. But
Right.
if you are hesitant or you want an extra device, like you could get a mirror to attach to your bike just to help ease your transition to looking behind you. So waiting at red lights. So don't squeeze your way up to the front. We all know people who have done that. I've probably been guilty of doing that, but you should not squeeze your way up to the front. And the safest thing to do is to wait for traffic to move and stay in the lane and flow with traffic.
Yeah, this illustration right here is just the best way to, and again, that's a move that will get you respect from drivers if you're not trying to like scooch up ahead. Because what happens then when the light turns green, cyclists do have a slight advantage. When a light turns green, we can get going faster, but then pretty quickly the car's going to go, you know, a car will outstrip our speed. So to just avoid irritation all around. And also a lot of times then if you try to squeeze around traffic, you get in a situation where you no longer have room and you have to end up merging into traffic again all over. So it's often faster to just stay where you are and wait in line for the light to turn.
Mm-hmm. It's usually faster, safer, and more predictable. So right turns and through lanes. So if you're turning right, position yourself in the rightmost third of the lane to turn. If traveling straight, position yourself in the leftmost third of the lane. So this is basically just again, being predictable to cars. So generally, if you're a little further over to the right, it signals to the person behind you that you will be turning versus in the center of the lane, which is just going straight, or getting over a little bit more to the left part of the lane to continue straight. You're kind of holding your own in the position of the lane to continue on in the directions that you're going. So a double right turn lane. We kind of already went over this earlier, but just to reiterate, some principles apply for a double right turn lane. This is, I'm trying to think of an example where this exists in Pittsburgh. I'll think of something, but crossing both right turn lanes to position yourself in the right third of the travel lane to go straight is basically what we are looking at here. So in order to avoid turning right, in order to go straight, you want to cross those two turning lanes in order to continue straight.
We don't have too many of these, but if you ride in other cities, you might encounter that sort of situation.
Definitely. Multiple left turn lanes. So a really obvious example of this in Oakland is right in front of the theater and like the museum, like right in front of Dippy the dinosaur. So right there, there's the two left turns that go up past the Heinz Chapel. So remember that the lane rules. So select the rightmost lane that leads to your destination. Select the appropriate lane positioning based on any additional destinations that the lane may serve. So for example, that means like if you're turning left but you want to continue straight, but as soon as you turn left, the right lane turns into like a parking lane or something, or it turns into the right turn lane, then you might want to be over another lane so that you can continue straight in your destination. So it's always looking ahead, seeing what's coming up, and making sure that where you are and how you're biking is being predictable for everybody around you, and that you're doing what you need to do to keep yourself safe. So one-way streets with two or more lanes. When making a left turn from a one-way street onto another one-way street, it is easiest to ride around the corner on the left.
Yeah, in other words, you don't want to be in the right lane and trying to turn left.
Right.
Especially if there's other cars.
Correct. Wouldn't be in the rightmost lane in the direction that you're going. So on and off ramps, an example of this in Pittsburgh would be the Birmingham Bridge, where there is a bike lane, but it crosses where cars are coming onto the bridge and also exiting the bridge. So for these, you just want to be assertive and have a heightened awareness. So you want to pay attention to the traffic coming from behind and from both sides. You want to be visible and predictable. Being visible here doesn't mean that you have to have like 100 lights on or, wearing your highest visible clothing. It can often be that you're just sitting up more assertively on your bike and you're really turning your head and scanning and making eye contact and also signaling maybe even well in advance to what you would normally do in a neighborhood. And you want to also follow the same principles we have just discussed for changing lanes and lane positioning. So, being in the rightmost lane in the direction that you're heading. So just making sure that your awareness is a little bit more heightened when there is a little bit more complex of a road pattern.
Fortunately, as cyclists, we have a big advantage over car drivers, and that is that we can see and hear a lot more than you can inside a car. So like the Birmingham Bridge, for example, you can glance over your shoulder and see and hear, is there traffic coming from the merge lane behind me on the right? How fast is that traffic moving? Should I pause and yield, or is it clear? And you can know those things in like a split second. Something else is what Anna said about eye contact. That goes a long way. If a car is coming from behind you and you need to merge, often just turning around and looking at the driver, they will, and especially if you're signaling, they know what you're going to do. They'll slow down and wave you ahead.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's becoming ever more important too to be making eye contact with so many people that are texting or looking down. Right. And so like it is extremely important, especially in these tight merge areas, that you are very aware of what the drivers are doing.
Yeah, if you look and they're like this, then you just yield because they have no idea.
Right. So this just goes back into the lane positioning, which is like the rightmost lane in the direction that you are headed. So we wanted to talk about riding on sidewalks here, just to emphasize for all of our new riders and for anybody as a refresher that riding on sidewalks can be dangerous, especially if you are riding in a high traffic area as well, because cars and drivers are not necessarily looking for a cyclist to be zooming on a sidewalk and in front of their car. So motorists typically do not expect you to be there, and they might not see you because they're just not looking for you in that location. So if choosing to ride on the sidewalk, use caution and moderate your speed. So don't be zooming along, at like 25 miles per hour and just don't even slow down at an intersection, and just know the law. So you're not allowed to bike on a sidewalk in a business district, and you can always dismount your bike, like we said before, and become a pedestrian in these areas.
Yeah, the illustration there is a good one. There's a driveway coming out across the sidewalk, and drivers often will see if there's, a pedestrian, but the pedestrians are moving a lot slower. If you're going fast down that sidewalk and go across the driveway, that could be very dangerous. The one time that I've had a serious collision with a car was completely my fault. It's because I was riding on a sidewalk and hadn't done a ABC quick check. My brakes didn't work, so a car pulled out of the driveway and I ran smack into the fender. I was fine. The car had a huge dent. Fortunately, the driver didn't care, but completely my fault because I was zooming down the sidewalk. Another point about, we said technically it's illegal to ride on the sidewalk in a business district. However, it's good to use your best judgment because many residential areas, especially within the city, are very dense, have a lot of pedestrians, have a lot of entrances and exits, sometimes hidden driveways. So they can be more dangerous to ride on the sidewalk in that type of dense residential area, as opposed to like an industrial area where there's huge buildings with not many entrances and exits and long distances between, not many pedestrians. You might not see anybody else. Mm-hmm. those types of areas can be okay, and especially like an industrial area might have faster traffic. So use your best judgment just based on how crowded it is, the driveways that might intersect the sidewalk.
And also, if you are biking on a sidewalk and you choose to get back into traffic, you have to wait and merge when it's safe. You can't just bounce off of the sidewalk and just zoom right back into traffic. That is extremely dangerous. So you want to make sure that if you are riding on a sidewalk and you choose to merge back into traffic, that you wait until it's safe to do so.
Exactly.
The bicycling facilities, we'll try to get through this pretty quickly because we are coming up on time, but this is a protected bike lane. There is a protected bike lane in Oakland going up right on Forbes Avenue now, which is exciting. I hope some of you get a chance to ride on it and experience that. There's also one, I'm horrible with names, but right by the library on the other side, there's also a protected bike lane over by the Fine Arts Building, and over by CMU, there's a protected bike lane. This is a picture, and a protected bike lane has these vertical barriers so that you are physically protected from traffic.
There's one on Shenley Drive, right? Going right by, oh, sorry, that's actually two-way protected bike lane, which we have here.
It is a protected bike lane, but it's a two-way protected bike lane. So this is a two-way, which means that there is bike traffic going in both directions, and it also has a physical vertical separation. It could be like these flex posts, it could be different barriers, but there is a vertical physical separation. It's not just paint on the road that's separating you.
And you do have to pay attention and ride in your lane, because there could be oncoming bicycle traffic on a lane like that.
Right. As you can
another example is the one on Penn Avenue downtown, correct?
Yeah, as you can see here, there's a cyclist back here, like coming towards us. So if you were biking on this side, like with a friend or something, you have to merge to the oncoming and then get back into your lane. So like you could ride two abreast if no one's coming, but if someone is coming in the opposite direction, you have to yield to them and get back over into your lane. So bike boxes, you've probably seen these all over Pittsburgh, especially in Oakland, and these are the green areas that are in front of the car traffic, and it just gives cyclists a head start so that they can be visibly in front of the cars and position themselves in the lane that they need to get into to go where they're going.
So
go ahead.
There's where do these exist in Pittsburgh? I think we have a few now.
So there's definitely one at the intersection of Bigelow and Forbes. I might be covered up with construction right now, but I believe there's one there. They put, there's a turn box up by CMU now that has a signalized bike light right in front of the statue with the people walking up on Morewood. There's also one on Negley and Center Avenue over in the East Liberty area. And there's actually
the Highland and East Liberty Boulevard.
Yeah.
So to quickly talk about left turn boxes, that's a really nice facility that gives cyclists sort of a safe island in the middle of a very wide intersection. And there's a video on Bike Pittsburgh's website for how it works, but basically it's to make a two-stage left turn, correct, Anna? Basically it's a box that's out in the intersection, and when you're making a left, you would go, it's a way to transition from the rightmost lane to a left turn and be visible. The first stage, you go out to the green box and wait there until the cross traffic light turns green. So it's almost like you're going with your first street, going with the green light for that, waiting at the bike box, and then waiting for the cross street to turn green, and then going with that. Is that correct? My explanation was not very good, but they're very handy for those kind of wide multi-lane intersections where traffic speeds are sometimes too high to safely just take a lane.
Right. Yeah, and it gives you an opportunity to stay in the right-hand lane and still and make a left turn essentially, but you just wait through 2 lights.
Right.
So these are other facilities, starting from the left and going to the right, that you will encounter if you start biking all throughout the city of Pittsburgh. So we have a huge network of trails, and we'll have a presentation on how to get to the trails on Friday. We have contraflow bike lanes. This is a picture. I'm sure you can recognize it, right? In Oakland, a contraflow bike lane means that the bike lane is going against the flow of regular traffic. We have buffered bike lanes, which is just paint, but it gives you extra space. And there's no vertical separation, it's just paint. Bike lanes, like a regular old bike lane, is just like a strip of paint, a share row, and that's the lane. There's shared lane markings, which are just the bike symbol with 2 chevrons. And then the newest street type in Pittsburgh is a neighborway, which is a traffic calmed street in a neighborhood that has traffic calming infrastructure like speed humps or intersection improvements or mini roundabouts. And if you get a chance to bike all through the city, you'll eventually encounter all these types of bike facilities that exist in the city.
So a handy thing to know about sharrows is that they are more or less placed where a good place to put your wheels is. Is that correct, Anna?
Mm-hmm.
They try to paint them so that you're outside the door zone,
Yeah.
but just a little bit slightly to the right of in the lane.
Yeah, so they'll always be roughly about 8 feet from the curb, which is about just what Karen said, like right outside the door zone, but also like in a good visible spot for drivers to also see you and be aware of where you are. So hazards in bicycling. So this is just we just wanted to talk about some risky behaviors. We've already gone over some of them, but just to really emphasize it, riding on sidewalks is risky behavior because you're just mixing yourself with a lot of different speeds and different types of people getting where they're going. And as probably being the fastest person, you are endangering like the pedestrians or possibly putting yourself in danger if you decide to like get off the sidewalk and emerge back into traffic. Riding the wrong way or against traffic, that's illegal and it's extremely risky behavior. Ignoring stop signs and traffic signals. This is risky behavior both for people on bikes and in cars, but ignoring a stop sign, even if you're looking ahead and you don't see somebody there, you never know what you're missing, like in your peripheral vision. So it is risky to not stop and follow the traffic laws and at traffic signals. So if you are at a street light and it's red, you have to stop. The only time that you are allowed to proceed through is if you are stopped and maybe it's been a few minutes and you really can tell that it's not going to turn unless another car comes, then you are allowed to proceed with caution, but it's only after a significant amount of time has passed. And it's this usually only happens with like older outdated traffic signals in like small towns that haven't had an upgraded light system. But most traffic signals in Pittsburgh are updated so that they can detect when there's even a bike at a traffic signal to trigger the light to change. And failing to yield when turning. So primarily motorists turning left or right across the path of a bicyclist. So, like turning left, you should yield to oncoming traffic. And if you don't do this, it's like the Pittsburgh left. A lot of people have heard of that. That's extremely risky behavior because you're kind of gambling that the other car isn't going to go before you. And it puts yourself in danger because you're not yielding. Even if you're signaling, you still have to yield unless the other car is like waving you on. So we just wanted to make sure that you are not doing any of these risky behaviors and putting yourself in danger.
Yeah.
So 5 layers of safety. Karen, do you want to go do this one?
Sure. In our education, we like to emphasize bike control above all other things because it helps you to be more calm when you're riding on the street if you have total control of your bike at all time. Yeah. And then, as we've said over and over again, obey the law. Positioning, you know, we've gone over a lot of different examples, but just putting yourself in the best position to get where you want to go communicates a lot to the drivers around you. And avoidance, that's part of being aware of what's going on around you. Even if you're perfect, other people are going to make mistakes. And if you can anticipate or at least see those mistakes as they're happening, you'll go a long way to keeping yourself safe. Passive safety, that includes helmets, gloves, and glasses. I really like to wear glasses pretty much every time I ride, even slow speed, just for bugs and debris coming up into my face.
So now we're at the end of our presentation, and we'll be happy to take any questions that you have about riding in the city or being a confident city cyclist or anything like that. Feel free to type it in the chat box, or if you are shy, you can always email me or Karen. I'm at Anna, ANNA, at BikePGH.org. And Karen is at Karen at...
My email address is weird. You can I'll type it in the chat. But
Facebook, you can also ask there as well.
Yeah. And part of our main point that we always make when we do these classes is that it can seem scary to ride in traffic, but if you keep all these this advice in mind, you can have a much easier time. And the more you do it, the more you practice these things, the easier it becomes and the more confident you'll become. When we take people out on the street in our class, we start with slow back streets that don't have much traffic and gradually work our way up into major city intersections.
Right.
And it's amazing, like even in a short ride, following all of these rules and bits of advice, we have a good time, and people see that drivers see them for the most part and respect what they're doing, and it all goes really well.
Mm-hmm. And on Friday, I'll go over how to plan your route, but it's also a good tip is to, like, if you are going to start bike commuting, trying your route out on a day that isn't, you know, a day that you have to be somewhere at a certain time, like trying on a Sunday morning your route. If you've done it a few times, like when there's no stress and you don't have to be somewhere by any particular time, you'll know how to anticipate like the change of lanes, the lights, how many lights you'll come across, you know, different things like that. And so just knowing things ahead of time, like going out and trying it, even like during COVID now, like where there's, you know, arguably less traffic out on the streets because more people are staying home and working from home, like just trying out your route, like at lunchtime or some other time that's convenient. It'll really help you to feel confident when you have to do it in real life to get to your work or wherever you're going, class, running an errand, etc. You'll feel more confident doing it if you've already tested it out.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Doesn't look like it. Thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Yeah,
You're very
no
welcome.
problem.
Thanks, everybody. We've got another session on traffic schools and smart cycling today at 2 o'clock. On Wednesday, we've got sessions about what to wear. Thursday, we've got a general tabling session to answer any of your questions during lunchtime, as well as sessions specific to the various campuses. And then Friday, after you've watched all the sessions, participated with us, we have sessions on accessing the trails, planning a route, and joining group rides. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.